Thanks for joining us as we try to get our lives together and examine the life of Godfrey of Bouillon, otherwise known as
the Crusader who refused to be king.
That's right.
Which is actually unique.
We're going to get into that.
Giving up power.
Yeah, giving up power. Was the guy, power hungry? Did he want that? Is that that's kind of the picture that we have sometimes of these?
A lot of times that's what the atheists sell it as. The Muslims sell it as. These Crusaders were just coming in. They just wanted blood, money, and land.
That's right.
And they're there to take everything. Well, no,
not with this guy. The Crusader who refused to be king. My name is John Newton, historical and science fiction author, and I'm joined by
Eric from Your Brother in Christ.
Who is Godfrey of Bouillon?
A cool dude.
He is. If he is a medieval crusader, isn't he one of those bad guys?
Nope.
Just another European bloodthirsty colonizer? Well, let's see. We're going to dig into his life, and we've got a timeline. We've got pictures. He's taken some selfies, before Jerusalem and stuff like this. We got that in there.
A selfie with the bear.
Yeah, selfie with the bear.
You got the selfie with the bear?
Yeah. Yeah, he had a contest with the bear, and he won.
I don't know about that.
Barely, right?
He survived.
He survived.
If the goal was to survive, yes.
Well,
the goal was not to get mangled, no.
Yeah. Well, bears are that way, I guess. So we're reviewing Defenders of the West, the Christian heroes who stood against Islam by Raymond Ibrahim. And we're going through each of the 8 defenders that are in this book and taking a look at it. Last week, we set the stage for the Defenders of the West, delving into the historical conflict between Islam and the West. We talked about it as a perennial conflict that is going on, just boom, 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 just continual. And we talked about just a millennial conflict. Actually, the conflict has been ongoing and to today, if you look at history that's going on now.
Yep, since the first day of Islam, it's been a cancer upon humanity.
It has. That was not the West who drew first blood, but Islam, with the concept of jihad being the driving force of expansion.
Yep, dated 400 years before the First Crusade.
Yeah, so that's where that perennial just over and over and over and over and over again.
Nope, not going away. Still
and
going to be here.
It took 400 years, longer than the United States has been a nation by far, for the West to say, all right, we have to have a concerted effort to fight back.
Yep, that's not something that's just staying out in the East. This is something that's spreading, and it's killing people, enslaving people, and, well, being a cancer to society. We looked at some of that last week, and we're going to touch a little bit on this week to see what was the impetus, the catalyst that got Godfrey of Bouillon started and the First Crusade. So he is a member of that. We're not so much focusing on the individual battles. We might say that for another live stream. We're looking at the men who were involved in this, key players in these battles and in this defense. So the Islamic expansion brought the army of Islam to the gates of Jerusalem in 638 AD. About 400 years later, in 1048, the Byzantine Emperor Constantine IX, Monomachos. Now that's a name. Monomacho.
That sounds like a wrestler coming out to this game. He sponsors the rebuilding of the Church of the Holy Sepulchre in cooperation with the Muslim Caliph. So the Muslim Caliph says, all right, you can do this, because he's now has control of that. By the way, Emperor Constantine was the first one who had built the Church of the Holy Sepulchre there. Now, what does that term mean? What is Holy Sepulchre? It sounds like something out of, I don't know, Oblivion or something. It's like, I shall seek the sepulchre. It's on my quest list. I shall find it. What is it? What does it actually mean? Do you know?
No.
Okay. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to pin you down. It is an old term, old English term. Actually, I think it was from the French, and then from Latin before that, meaning tomb. And that's actually could have been even used as a verb, but it's no longer used as a verb now, to bury somebody. So this is a burial spot. This is Jesus's tomb that was done. And there are some, we're not going to go over it now, but there is some really good archaeology on discovering where the tomb was. I just kind of, in the past, I just kind of waved it off a little bit and said, yeah, it sounds like a tourist trap that's out in Israel. You know, you go to this spot, then you go to that spot, and things happen. But actually, you can trace the history by the structures that have been put on that particular spot over time. And it'd be very interesting to do a history on that to see where that came from. But this is one of the places there that is central. It's key to the Crusades getting started. So that was a big thing. With the Muslim takeover of Jerusalem, pilgrimages were allowed because it was, if nothing else, it was a nice money maker. Right.
It's a money maker. That's what it came down to.
If you can get, it's like, why kill the fatted cow? We get them in, but there's going to be a lot of restrictions on what can be done. So what, we're not delving too deep into this early history of the original conquering of Jerusalem by the Muslims. It was held by Rome, then the Byzantine Empire, the Eastern Roman Empire. When the Western Roman Empire fell, it was held by the Eastern Roman Empire, and then the Persians took it, and that was before they were Islamicized. And then the Caliph, which one was it? We're going to talk about him in a bit. One of the caliphs came in and took Jerusalem.
Umar.
Are you sure it's Umar?
Uthman was the fourth. Umar was the third. I'm pretty sure it was Umar, which he was the second.
We're going to get to that a bit. We'll see, because we're going to delve into the history.
But he only reigned for 2 years.
So who was this guy here, Geoffrey Bouillon? Before we get to that, we're going to ask, we took a poll, and I'm going to find out, the question in the poll was, do you think the history of the Christian-Muslim conflict is taught fairly today? Now, we're talking about the history, not current time of Christian-Muslim contact. So I'm going to keep an eye on this poll. I'm going to keep it rolling for a while. We have 138 votes, and 5% said yes, it is balanced. 95% said no, it is biased against the West. Nobody said it was biased against Islam, and nobody said they were not sure. So this sounds like it's a fairly.
How many votes were on that?
I think 38. I'd like to see if we can get that higher to
not too bad.
Add to it. No, I want to get a balanced shot. So the problem with polls all the time, is your sampling group that who you're sampling from. So these are people that either subscribe to this channel, or this poll was suggested by YouTube, or whatever the deal was. And you probably do get more Christians that are viewing this poll. So it's going to be looked at in a certain light. If I went to, I don't know, a Muslim group and put this poll out, I bet there would be different results coming out of it. So, or totally secular. If I went to a secular college, it might be something different. But I have seen this in doing the research on for this live stream. There is you look at historical record, and then when you get to the Christian accounts of what happened, either in the siege of Jerusalem or other events, or what happened, what the Muslims were doing, it's alleged this, supposedly this happened. Yeah, and they're using that soft language to kind of cart it out, that if you're not paying attention, subliminally, you just go ahead and shelf it off to say, oh, okay, that's just hearsay.
Yeah, but whenever they're talking about anything that could be used against the Crusades, this definitely happened. Typically,
that was, yes, it was straight out as this fact, until you hit it the other way around. Wow. We have quite a few. Okay, before we jump in, we're going to take a look at comments, because there's quite a few on here. Okay, I'm just going to start throwing this up left and right. I'm taking you guys in pure faith without reading each one before I put it up here. Carol B said, so it's just me and the gentleman. You are so nice in calling everybody here, including in the chat, and us as gentlemen. I don't know. Maybe we qualify. I'm here too. just to learn this time. Thomas Hall. Come on, Thomas. You have a lot of good things to say. And we got a lot of hellos and everything. And we need to bring back names like Godfrey. I'm too old, but it's not too late for Eric's next child.
Godfrey. I should start naming them Crusader names one after the other.
I don't think
that wouldn't be bad.
You think your wife would go for it?
Probably.
I don't know.
She listens to the book. She probably will.
She might, yeah. My great-grandfather's middle name was Godfrey.
Oh, that's interesting.
I like strong old names. That Godfrey would have been odd with my married name Frey. Godfrey Frey.
That would be interesting.
Fee, fi, fo, fum. I called my son James. That's
James.
It's a
good
Christian name. I just covered the discovery, the site of the building that Church of Life of Constantine, Book 3. Hadrian buried the site and built a temple of Venus on it. In doing so, preserved it. Yes. So there's a really interesting history on this. I'm sorry, I'm getting excited about this one because I really did. I looked at this as just being, the Church of the Sepulchre. You pay for this one, you pay for that one going through, and the tour guide takes you through all of them. There's some solid evidence.
It's all legit.
Yeah, because of in the Romans. Thank you, Romans, for doing this. Venus, and wouldn't they put Jupiter on there too? I'm not sure. I think maybe it's either way. When they followed Jerusalem, and the Christians, that's what started. The Christians were meeting there. Mm-hmm. Because it was a holy spot for them. And I don't know if we're going to have time to talk about this, but that's another big discussion about this. What propelled the First Crusade and the others, and ones that came after it, was that there are certain sacred spots in Christendom or among the church itself, the church at large, to say that, hey, these are special spots for us. And we can debate whether locations have any specific meaning or not, but to the early church, it was a great place to go and gather and meet.
And it meant something. There was something there more than just, we're just meeting on Sunday.
Yeah.
We're meeting at Bob's house today. No.
Right. I've never been there. I have been to the Middle East, but I have not been to Jerusalem. I would love to go see the spot. I don't know. I'm wondering if you guys would, if you had the chance, or if you have seen it. It's just, a place. And we have a virtual tour that we're going to be taking later. There's a website you can go. I'm going to pop it up here in a little bit, and we're going to see some of the images of us. Does that make much of a difference? Well, it definitely did to medieval Christians, because part of their Christian life was to do a pilgrimage to certain places. And these places were sacred and holy. You could go to Rome. You could go to St. James of Compostela. I think that's in Galicia in Spain. There's all Alexandria may have been another one. Yeah. And so these Antioch might have been one. I would love to just hit all the places that you can see in the Bible. I mean, you can do that now. You can go to places in Turkey and go to Ephesus and see these historic spots. Was it West Huff? I believe it's West Huff. He's put up a couple of shorts recently talking about some of his places he's been going to. I think he was just in Ephesus. He's talking about those. So, all right. So let's see what else you guys have to say before we move on. Okay, you did that one. And okay, before I was wiser, I was led to believe the Crusades were just an awful political land grab by evil white men.
Yeah, that's the common story.
That is.
And it's not true at all.
Yeah, when you start digging into these guys' lives and finding out who they were,
now,
and
could there have been someone that had that sort of mentality? Maybe. But if they wanted a land grab, there was a lot more land closer to home.
So in the earlier church, correct me if I'm wrong, there was a belief that you can do certain holy things to gain grace. And one of those would be pilgrimages. The others are sacraments, things like that. You still see that in Catholic Church and I believe in Eastern Orthodoxy. I'm not 100% sure. But as you can do these things. So if that is taken away from you, then that becomes a point of real not just angst, but conflict, because you have to make it to those places. Imagine if Mecca was blocked off.
Oh, they'd have a heck of time with that.
Yeah, and maybe you guys can tell me what you would consider if there is such a thing as a sacred place, a place that's set apart and for a purpose, and it has some specific significance in Christianity. What would you say is the most sacred spot around the world? What would it be? And it's I'm letting you know right now, I don't think anybody's going to say Los Angeles. I don't think that's not on the list.
I'd have to go with Jerusalem.
Okay. Carol says, I've read the Crusade book since I was 10, and they are never kind to Europeans.
Nope.
Yeah.
The common ones, no. This one, on the other hand, is a bit more realistic.
Yeah. So again, I'm going to pop this up here. Defenders of the West by Raymond Ibrahim. It's the one that we're going through in the next few weeks. We're going to be just hitting that. So Thomas said, to some extent, it's a good thing to be critical of your own side. Yes, absolutely. To be introspective. It's better to bring light to darkness. Christianity is stronger for having ears of skeptics. Yeah.
In the end, yes, definitely.
Isn't that true?
Because Islam is now hitting actual pushback from skepticism, and it ain't doing so good.
They've been able to soft pedal so many things because they haven't had the hard questions asked.
Now they're having the hard questions asked, and you got the avalanche of apostasy going on now.
Right.
Mostly because of those hard questions being asked.
Like even textual criticism, or you're looking deeper into sources, you're looking deeper into history, scientific claims that have been made. I mean, the list just goes on. I
was just on with Hatun last night, and we were talking about the perfect preservation of the Quran, which they claim. Although, if you look at the Hadith, it definitely does not say it was perfectly preserved. The Hadith are pretty clear. That's like, no, we lost entire sections of the Quran, and we just saved as much as we could, burned the rest, and hope we did the best we did.
Tell me you brought the goat.
I did not bring the goat today.
We need the goats. We need the goats.
And yes, the goat also ate the Quran.
Yes, he did.
How is your God protecting it if it's
perfectly preserved
by a
It's
goat?
A perfectly preserved goat. Carol says she's been there. I would love to, and hear the stories. If that church is authentic, is something I've fully changed my mind about recently. I'm convinced it's legit. You know what else is something I've kind of changed my mind about too? I was raised Catholic. Okay, so I remember when I was young hearing about the Shroud of Turin, and being a young kid, I didn't have to. But then getting older, teenager and stuff like that, going through different times, it's like, it sounds like it's just another relic out of the Middle Ages that it's making its rounds to get coin or whatever. However, more recent scientific discoveries on the shroud itself seem to point that might be legit. Now, I'm not going to put my faith on that and say that I'm resting my faith on that. My faith is on Scripture.
It would be interesting if it's true.
Yeah,
but it's not a cornerstone of the faith.
No, but I tell you, it's so exciting to look at the recreations of the face of Jesus based on that. And it's like, ooh, I'm geeking out. It's like showing 3D versions. There's only so much you could do because of the way it's done. But still,
and there's something to be said to be able to look at some things that you believe and be like, no, it was wrong. I need to correct it. I need to shift my view on it.
Right.
And reevaluate.
Critically thinking and hold lightly to those things that you'd hold lightly to. I would not put us on the same level. However, the first photograph was, I think, France, Germany, I'm not sure where, but it was a guy who stopped, first person photograph, was a guy who stopped to get a shoe shined. And you can look this up. You see the guy there, and he's kind of outlined, and the shoe shiner maybe is doing his work. That was in the 1800s. The Shroud of Turin would that be considered the first photograph? Because you think about how it's actually done, the impression, right?
Yep. It would be some sort of photographic.
It's not a painting.
Nope. It would be impressions upon the fabric, the canvas, in this case. So very interesting.
Yes. And very much off topic. I apologize because we need to talk about this guy here.
But there's a value to be able to look at it and say, you know what, I might have been incorrect about some things, and I can reevaluate and move forward. And same with Godfrey here.
Yeah.
Yep, we could reevaluate and say, you know what, was he perfect? No.
When I had there was a couple of weeks ago that we had another live stream when we were talking about the myth of the Andalusian paradise, and I mentioned something about the Crusades in a positive light, and man, I got some nasty comments there saying, "Oh, a Christian who defends the crusade, blah 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 blah," and going on. That's a hard one to take, and so that's one of the reasons why we're going through this, to take a closer look and say, am I wrong? Now, these guys that are in here, did they do everything right? Did they follow what the guidelines of what we would look at today as being a just war? And the answer is no.
And I think if we were to do that, if we were to take our concept of just war and apply it to someone who lived back then without those concepts, it doesn't seem very just.
We can't even do it today.
No.
And what they would, Raymond Ibrahim mentions in his books, it says if the Crusaders of old would have looked at our reasons for warfare today, they would say that we're much more immoral in how we handle war than they. So why are we fighting over territory? Why are we fighting over these other mundane things? So
I think that's some things that the atheist claim comes from is, well, they don't understand why they did it. So obviously it must be in perspective of things that we would value today, like fighting over land or over property. So that must be what they did it for, not their actual intents behind it. So
there's another comment from Carol. She's saying a lot of people will base their faith on that. Sadly, I mean, you're talking about maybe some of the Shroud of Turin or other things. It will be a true idol for some, as if it holds the divinity of Christ. No, that's not.
It's a cloth. It's interesting, but it's a cloth.
Yeah, but it's a very special. You got to handle it. It's a very special.
It's a very cool cloth.
I wouldn't want it to get ruined. It's sort of like the Constitution of the United States. It's just a piece of paper. No. In the end, a person's soul is far greater value than that piece of paper.
Sorry, I still laugh at the whole history of the Constitution. They had it in a window.
Oh. And
it was stuffed in the back room, and no one knew about it for like 50 years.
Yeah.
And then they finally discovered it, like,
whoopsie.
Whoops.
Well, the same thing can be said. I'll come back to your comment here in a second. The same thing could be said about, was it Texas Sinaiticus being, from what I understand, the story was you have a scholar visiting the monastery on Mount Sinai. And it's a cold night, sometimes in the desert, cold nights and stuff like this.
Yes, this
is
true.
He was staying there, and the monk comes in and he's feeding the fire. And the guy looks at some of the stuff he's feeding and says, "Oh, wait, it was manuscripts. He was just old newspaper stuff. I'm just feeding." It's like, no,
it's the old manuscripts from the Bible. It's
Stop it, Mark, please give it to me.
But
don't do any more.
They don't. To their mindset, they make these manuscripts all the time.
Yeah, I don't know if they were in particular doing those, like scribing manuscripts or whatever. It was just that was in the back room, and he's being very nice and hospitable to this visitor. How many other times has something like that happened?
Yep.
But yeah. Sadly, my grandmother did the same thing to a lot of our genealogical stuff. And one cold night in Washington State. So Christian Sodium Channel said that shoe shine photo is crazy. You can tell the guy wearing the shoe, wearing some weird period hat. Yeah. I don't know if you can actually see the shoe shine guy because he's moving, and they had long exposures for that. So, I always responded to the shroud as Nahastan.
Idol.
Thank you. But I saw where people claim it pushed the over the edge to belief. Yeah, and I would still caution you. I think you guys are right. You really do need to have a balance with this. You cannot make it an idol. It has no, the question does it have any spiritual significance? It definitely has historical significance. Hugely. You want to, just like, even more, not as important as New Testament or Old Testament manuscripts. I think those have more value because they have the written word of God on them, and you want to preserve them for other reasons to get that message. The Shroud of Turin would be something I think would be held a little bit differently.
It'd be a nice little, object to see every now and then.
Yeah, well, thank God for digitization. We can share in that as if we're seeing it directly ourselves. That's national treasure. Okay, so who was Geoffrey of Bouillon? Brief autobiography. He came from noble lineage, upbringing and character. He was born in 1060. That must have been a pretty interesting era. The first millennium passes. I bet there's a lot of people that were saying, not only is Christ coming in the year 1000, but our computers are going to be toast because we only use 2 digits for the year. They had to redo all their manuscripts.
You mean 3 digits?
Yeah, just right.
Yeah,
that would have been 3 digits.
Like,
yes.
That happened a long time before that.
He was born in France as a nobleman with reputation for piety and skill in battle. Even at an early age, he excelled in battle. He was connected to European royalty, including lineage tied to Charlemagne, and I believe his uncle worked with William the Conqueror, 1066. So you can see it's like he was 6 years old when that happened, right?
Yeah.
So all with that. Now, he was Duke of Lower Lorraine. So and that's not like Lorraine McFly. Don't even go down, because it's a science fiction channel. Don't even go down that path, though. This is not Back to the Future. Lower Lorraine, and we have this map here of the Holy Roman Empire. See if you can figure out where Lower Lorraine is. Okay, well, there's
below Lorraine.
You would think it'd be south, right? It's not. It's north of it, probably because lower in altitude, right? It's Lower Lorraine. It's just like the Upper Nile is south of the Lower Nile.
Well, I'm glad they have GPS to make sure they know where lower is.
So this is where he was, and you can see this is the Holy Roman Empire, which has been said it's neither holy nor Roman, but okay, whatever. Go figure. Go do history. But this is where he was. He did give his loyalty to the emperor of the Holy Roman Empire. And but he was known for his humility, piety, and martial strength. And there was a story of a battle that he was having with this guy, and he hit this man, and the man challenged him for land, and the emperor said, "Okay, you guys can do this duel to prove that's what they did back then, whose land it was." Yada yada. Duke, they called him the Duke a lot. The Duke Godfrey said, "No, let's just work this out diplomatically." And it's not like he's trying to wimp out. I mean, he's a big dude. And so the other said, "No, we should do a battle." So they fight. His sword breaks as he's fighting this other guy, and the other people that are watching said, "Whoa, we got to stop the fight." And the other guy said, "No, I want to still fight." And the Duke said, "Okay, let's go for it." And he ends up vanquishing the guy. So he had a pretty strong reputation. The commoners liked him as well during the campaign. He was beloved by those guys, according to record. So, meanwhile, in Jerusalem, we have some goings on. So let's paint the picture of what's happened with Jerusalem. We're not going to go too far back, but you have the Seljuk conquest of Jerusalem in 1071. So this is during the life of Godfrey. It's 1071 to 77. This is after the Battle of Manzikert. The Seljuk Turks consolidated control over Jerusalem, which had been under the Fatimid rule. This shift was a critical event, marking the beginning of a stricter Islamic governance and this disruption of Christians across the city. Now, wait a minute. How did they get a hold of Jerusalem in the first place? Wasn't it a part of the Byzantine Empire?
It was originally until the Muslims came and invaded and took it.
Yes.
And then after that, they went ahead and passed it around like a bad potato.
Well, yeah. So the Persians had taken it first, and then the Muslims had taken it to the Persians. Yeah, they were actually around. They took it from the Byzantine Empire, if I got my history right. And then the Muslims took it. And so what had happened when the Seljuks took power, that it's like it goes from hand to hand to hand within the...
Everyone's got to have it. Whoever claws their way to the top of the Muslim pyramid has got to take Jerusalem because it's a big shiny object that they all got to have.
Right. And so during all these different civil wars that are within the caliphates,
the Ummah is definitely not united.
No. So a lot of infighting. It's like ever since the beginning, there's infighting. The reports had come back to the West that the Seljuk Turks, which were like, they took on Islam as like even more so than the Arabs or even the Persians. They said, this is us. This is who we are. And went full blast and really started to clamp down in Jerusalem because there was some detente that was in there. So they were allowing them to do the pilgrimages like we talked about earlier and stuff.
Just pay taxes. You're under Sharia law. There's a lot of laws you got to go through. There's a lot of hoops you got to go through. But it wasn't really strict Sharia. So they're wiggling around that part.
Yes. And the jizya is more, we got to say this every time because I made a mistake one time. The jizya is more than just an extra tax you have to pay. Like we all have to pay taxes. We get so tired of having to pay taxes. It was more than just that.
It's protection.
It's protection money from a mob. Racket. It's humiliation, and it's done in such a way that people would eventually get discouraged and say, "I'm just going to be Muslim. Just get over it. I can't pay this. I can't." And I'm so ostracized with everything that's going on. So the destruction of churches was another thing that had happened during that period by the Fatimid Caliphate's Al-Hakim. This was from 1009 to 1010. Al-Hakim bin Amir Allah, who ruled from 996 to 1021, ordered the destruction of several key Christian sites, including the Church of the Holy Sepulchre in Jerusalem at 1009. This church was believed to house, like we talked about earlier, Christ's tomb, and was a central pilgrimage for Christians. I would say it's probably on par with taking the Hajj to Mecca. Probably as now, I would say not to that same point because it's not like a pillar of Christianity to do this.
It's
but of all places,
out of all places, yes, you could see that as being sort of a parallel. Again, it's not required within Christianity, whereas required within Islam, and it's just FYI. It was never a pagan site to begin with.
What?
The Church of the Holy Sepulchre was not a pagan site to begin with.
You're okay. I thought you were talking about Mecca. I thought you were talking.
Mecca was definitely a pagan site to begin with.
Yeah, no. Okay, I get you. Yes, no, it was not a. It was a tomb. Joseph of Arimathea. He had that his tomb, nice, neatly cut out. It's a new tomb. It hasn't been used before, which they did recycle, by the way, back then. So when they said it was a new tomb, it was like no one's been buried here before. It was great. It's a wonderful tomb. Never been buried before.
It's a rental.
They rented obviously just for a couple of days.
It's just a rental. I just need it for a couple of days, then you can use whatever. It's a rental.
You can. Whenever Jesus appeared to him later, it says, "Hey, you can have it back."
You can have it back. I'm done with it now.
But I'm done.
Real cozy.
Yeah. Here's a cloth. All right, so
a little dusty.
The destruction of these places was seen as a deliberate and a desecration of one of Christendom's most holy places, fueling outrage in the West. Additionally, Al-Hakim demolished the Church of St. Mark in Egypt and other Christian structures, further escalating tension. So you can imagine if the Jews today destroyed the Dome of the Rock Mosque.
Oh, yeah.
The amount of outrage that would have been there. That's not even talking about the Kaaba. We're talking about,
Nope, I still think they should.
Site number 2.
If they're the ones in there, they kind of own it.
They could, yeah. But this is okay. So it's very. There's a lot of similarities because we're talking about in the same area. So there was oppressive decrees that also went out against Christian. Again, we're creating. This is the foundation from which the First Crusade was launched. And we're taking some extra time on this because we need to understand what the mindset was of the church, not only in the West, but also in the East, of what's going on, to say this is a point of desperation. We have been tolerant. We have been forbearing for quite a while here, and it's just going over the top.
Yeah, meanwhile, they're still doing slave raids of Europe. They're still doing pillaging, plundering, taking Christian people as sex slaves as well as normal slaves. Still going on behind the scenes.
Yeah, and at 1000 AD, we already had the invasion of Islam into Europe through this right.
Through Spain.
Backwards. Through Spain. I know. Spain's over here. Through Spain in 711, all the way up to the Pyrenees and over, and that's where Charles Martel said, "No, you shall not pass," and bumped him back out with great enthusiasm. So these included, talking about what Al-Hakim had done, these included forced conversions, expulsion of Christians from Jerusalem, and several restrictions on religious practices, such as the banning of ringing of church bells.
Nope, no church bells.
Or the public displays of crosses. Now, you might think it like this, like, what's the big deal? I mean, most of the churches today don't have bells or don't have, they might have a cross that's displayed there. But these were important to them, important repressions, more and more and more and more sidelined. And we saw what happened in Spain with these repressions. You get this slow increase of just
ratcheting it down until you convert.
Basically,
it's a systematic annihilation of your beliefs in order to force you into conversion through what seems to be minor, peaceful issues, but in the end, it's still the same.
So this
forced conversion,
right? Humiliation to the point of capitulation in Christian communities. One thing after another. Like, you couldn't rebuild if your church was damaged. You couldn't rebuild.
Couldn't repair it.
Couldn't repair. There was only certain places like the Church of the Holy Sepulchre and a couple others where there would be a place where you can get money from pilgrimages coming through to say, yes, you could do this. You can imagine if during the Gulf War, the West had taken over Saudi Arabia and taken over Mecca. I'm not saying to do this. I'm just saying that if it had happened, you can imagine the amount of outrage that there would be. And if they had set up to say, okay, you can come and do your pilgrimage, but we're going to control very much what you do here. And
non-Muslims can go into Mecca and they can hang out in the Kaaba, and no Muslim can argue with it. And if they have issues, then you get arrested and fined for it. Yeah, that would be outrageous for them. They would never accept it.
So the Seljuks ratcheted it up even more. Following their takeover of Jerusalem in the 1070s, violence and harassment against Christian pilgrims increased. The Seljuks, unlike the Fatimids, were less tolerant, often taxing pilgrimages more heavily, robbing them and subjecting them to physical abuse. Some accounts describe pilgrims being killed or enslaved, contributing to the narrative that Muslim aggression of Christians was increasing in what should have been a holy region. And they're saying, hey, this is getting to be too much.
And there's some pretty horrendous accounts of other actions that were taken.
Yeah.
That would be up with what's happening over in England right now with the certain groups that are going around doing activities.
Oh, yes, those activities. So there's a broader context of Islamic expansion from the 7th century onward, and these events were within that history. Christian populations in regions like Syria, Judea. Sorry, these notes were taken out of some historical books. I got to make sure that Palestine didn't exist at the time.
Well, actually, technically, what year was it?
No, that would have been after, because that's what Rome had named it, right?
It's Judea in my book, but yes, Rome would have renamed it at that point.
Syria, Egypt, and North Africa. There was a deep sense of loss and deep fear in the West as Christian territories were systematically taken over, often accompanied by violence against Christians, including rape, enslavement. Sorry to say grape. Enslavement or slaughter. This broader historical grievance amplified the urgency it felt in the West by the time of the First Crusade. So as you can imagine, there is like pent up anger and towards what's happening out there. There's a feeling of lack of justice. People are that this is building up over time. These regions on the western edge of the Mediterranean Sea were not the backwater of Christendom.
Nope.
And quite the opposite. They were deeply rooted historical cities in Christian culture, such as Antioch, Alexandria, Damascus, and they were places that were often spoken about in the New Testament. So it's as if the vanguard of the most educated and the most developed areas of Christianity at the time. They also spread through the rest of Europe too. But that's like, these are old time stuff.
They were ahead of their times. They were technologically advanced. They were pioneering new stuff. And then Islam got it, and guess what? It stagnated.
Yeah.
And I mean, if you look at it today, a lot of that area is still controlled by Muslims.
Yeah, when you think of Damascus, when you think of Egypt, when you think of these different areas out there, it's Muslim controlled. But that was not the case back then.
Nope.
That they had taken over the territory. So it's within that context that we meet up again with Godfrey. And as a result of what was happening in that time, Pope Urban II made a call to liberate Jerusalem. This is in 1095. It's like, finally, after all this has happened, it's like, we're as a group going to have to do something about this, because placating and just allowing it to happen is doing the opposite.
Yeah,
it's going the other direction.
Emperor finally took a breath of fresh air.
Yeah. And it's not like the West hasn't been making a stand, but it's more of a defensive nature.
It's been defensive. The problem with that is, if it's always defensive, if they take one step forward and you're still being defensive, they now own that step.
Right. That's territory that has been lost. Launched in 1096. After Pope Urban II's call to reclaim Jerusalem from Muslim rule, a mix of religious zeal, political ambition, and response to threats against Christian pilgrimage. Now, I say some political ambition, because within that, there will be some people that are going for alternative means. But for the most part, to make this pilgrimage, and it was an armed pilgrimage. This time, we're going with weapons this time.
Because they, raped, pillaged, robbed all the other pilgrims we sent there,
right,
to a pretty regular extent, including, again, some pretty horrendous descriptions in there. Yeah,
so
you need to be armed,
right? So basically, an armed guard going with the tourists or pilgrims that are going out in that direction, and to take this back, to say, listen, this is going to stop. We're going to take this. We're going to reclaim this territory that has been taken. The crusade was necessitated by a need to protect Christian territories and holy sites from Muslim conquest. The Seljuk Turks' takeover of Jerusalem and their imposition and restrictions on Christian pilgrims as a direct provocation and a need for this. It was also seen as a religious duty that, hey, we need to do this as a group, that you just can't allow others to be subjected to this kind of treatment. You're morally obligated.
Defend the weak.
Which is
are being oppressed.
A part of
the
just war, right? It's either self-defense or defending someone else who is weak and stuff like that. You can almost look at that as being on a personal level too. So I'm going to stop for just a second here and take a look at the chat. I see some more have rolled in. Now, this is from Carol B. Looking back at the map that we had earlier, it says Lorraine is next to Alsace, the disputed land between Germany and France. Alsace and Lorraine. That was, especially during World War II, I believe, right?
Yes.
Part of that territory that Hitler had taken back. So it played an active role even more recently. Hadrian named it Palestine. He was basically Neo-Haman, proto-Hitler, an antichrist in in any case.
Neo-human, but yes.
What's that?
Neo-human?
Haman.
Neo-Haman. Okay.
And may his bones turn to dust.
Well, technically, everyone's bones turn to dust that die eventually.
Yeah, but okay, because I think you want something bad to happen to him. Well, may justice be done. May he stand before the throne of heaven, give an account for his deeds, yada yada, like we all must do, with our bones turning to dust.
Yeah, well, after 1,000+ years, yes, I expect so.
So the other thing that necessitated this crusade was the Byzantine Emperor Alexios Komnenos requested military aid following the Seljuk victory at the Battle of Manzikert in 1071, and that was another trigger for their response of the West to say, we need to come to our brothers' aids. And this was all these things that just stacked up to finally go. So Godfrey acted not for glory, but for God. There's a lot of sayings in the writings. It's not that he's doing it for himself. This is not a badge that he would necessarily get. One of the complaints that his soldiers had of him was that because later on they're looking for a leader, and they interview each of the subordinates of the princes and dukes and so forth that had taken the crusade and said, tell us the truth about who your boss. Okay, this is completely confidential. You say what you want, open record. Tell us about it. And they said basically the only objection we have to his character at all, Duke Godfrey, is he spends too much time after church debating and talking with the priests afterwards, and our food is getting cold.
I would have had fun with them.
So yeah, that was and there's other things that come up about him that looks like he's a solid guy. You know, it's one of the other markers of a good leader is how your followers feel about you, not just in these particular interviews, but after his passing. There's a lot of people even in the lower ranks that went for him.
How your enemies respect you as well. And even the Muslims respected him.
That is true. That is true. So he sold his estates to fund the journey, showing his dedication. He led a large army, earning respect for his humility and leadership. The Crusaders traveled thousands of miles, facing starvation, disease, and battles. And this was something they known up front. It's not like, hey, we're just going to take a flight out to Israel and check out the tours. No, that's not the deal at all. Key leaders included Godfrey, Bohemond of Taranto, and Raymond of Toulouse. Now, Bohemond, I think he was a giant. I think he was like a big dude. Not just, I mean, he had giantism. He was a big guy. So, and all these guys were well known. But of the list that is given of the first Crusaders, Godfrey is first on the list. And I don't think that was because he's the first to sign up. I think that was the first in preeminence when they were writing this, that they recognized him as being a good guy. So a couple of comments here. Back to, oh boy. Jews still say that about Hadrian if you speak his name in Jerusalem, talking about bones
turned to dust.
Yes. Especially during the Franco-Prussian War, circa 1870. You must be talking about, I think you're talking about Alsace and Lorraine. Yeah, whatever the deal is, that is like a contested area. Franco-Prussian War, Alsace and Lorraine taken by the new Germany. World War I, Alsace and Lorraine returned to France. World War II, Germany takes the area again until French. I am a midget among
geographic.
Huh?
It might be geographic.
Yeah.
Why?
Probably. Why it's so important.
It might be a corridor.
Could be. I am a midget among giants of history here. You guys really know your stuff. That's good.
Or just know how to use Google.
History. Okay. I am a jock among history nerds. That's probably the better way to put it there. And a BA in history.
Yeah, okay, never mind.
Okay. So I am a midget.
Never mind.
Okay, so let's take a look. I did create a timeline, and hopefully it's not going to be too much of that you'll be able to read this, but that you have in, oh my golly, I don't know if I can read this. I'm going to put up on another one. We do have different parts of his life, and I have this. I'll pop this up every once in a while so we can see this.
I may be able to help you a little bit at least.
Oh,
just for the section.
Oh, thank you so much. Okay, very good. I appreciate that. That's why I had a technical guy here. Okay, so let's start at the bottom because that's working from the past up to the future, which are closer in time is up at the top. Pope Urban II calls the First Crusade in 1095. Godfrey joins the First Crusade in 1096. I don't know if it just took a while to get word around. By the way, the this is somewhat subjective because I did it by years or half a year on some of these because I didn't have months for all these, and it looks like some things are stacked up a little bit differently, but that's the way they are. So Godfrey joins the Crusade. A year later, you have the Siege of Nicaea, and following shortly after that, the Battle of Dorylaeum. The Siege of Antioch follows after that, the siege and capture of Jerusalem in 1099. He rules Jerusalem for a while, and this is too much of a spoiler. I'm going to put spoiler alert up here because
you made this.
I did make
it's
this.
Like, I'm going to pull this up now.
I'm going to put
it's spoiler warning.
Spoiler warning because we haven't hit that part of the history yet. So key moments in battle, the Siege of Nicaea, the early victory against the Seljuk Turks. Now, one of the things you got to remember as these Crusaders are going through, if they're welcomed by the Eastern Roman Empire, they're welcomed by Constantinople, they can maybe get some more supplies and go through. That wasn't always the case, but they welcome and go through. And one of the conditions were, if you guys go through and taking lands, they're ours, they're not yours. Okay, you're just helping us out here. Okay, and so they go through, but then there's a question of supplies and dwindling attrition. That they're losing.
Men.
They're losing men.
And losing their soldiers.
If they had ended up after they had taken Jerusalem with the same army they started off with, they would have held it for much longer than what they did. You're right. And another thing that he was handicapped by is he didn't have a navy. Yep. And so when we went to lay some sieges later, as we'll look, there were some issues with that. Let's take a look at again, another map here. This is showing the Crusade, and we're looking at Godfrey of Bouillon. So this is the First Crusade. If you look at the green line, or excuse me, the yellow line that's there from the top, you see from Bouillon all the way through Vienna, Belgrade, Constantinople, and he joins the others in Constantinople and then continues through. So as they come through, the first, Nicaea is the first. They go, and you think about Nicaea. You look at modern day. Get rid of that map. You look at modern day Turkey now. I think, okay, all Muslim area, but how many key Christian places of history were in there? In
99% of them.
Ephesus and others. Council of Nicaea. You have the Council of Nicaea that was done. You have the Nicene Creed that was formulated there. And this is spoken in many churches across the world, the Nicene Creed. So it must have been really disheartening to see those places taken over. Again, it's just a place. And we're looking at taking people's hearts. Still, there is that. So the Siege of Nicaea in 1097, the Battle of Dorylaeum in 1090, also in 1097, in which he was showing his tactical prowess. We don't have time. I've already taken a whole lot of time here. We don't have time to go through all the details, everything. But then you get the Siege of Antioch.
Now, one of the interesting things that, if I may, real quick,
yes,
as they're coming in, now, armed pilgrims haven't happened before this point. So the Muslims' reaction is like, what are you doing? Why are you armed? You're not supposed to be armed. We're supposed to be able to rob you. We're supposed to be able to rape you. We're supposed to be able to take advantage of you in every way, shape, or form. Why are you armed?
Abdullah, he's got a gun.
Easy.
Yeah.
And no, And you know what? Looking back at a lot of the tactics they're using that's described in this are tactics that they still use today.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, you can see that even in the West, some of the tactics that they're doing, they're still doing it. Definitely oh no, what? How are you armed? Why are you defending yourself against me?
Yeah.
I'm just an innocent person.
I don't have the quotes, although the quote is in the book by one of the Muslim leaders there. He says, "What are you doing here armed? You're supposed to be peaceful pilgrims. You're not." And he really just kind of like tried to lay a guilt trip on him and say, what's wrong with you people? It's like,
you keep
kind of force the issue here.
Enslaving us, you keep pillaging, plundering, raping, all these things. You know, we would like to defend ourselves.
They have to, especially the women and children that are there too, that are part of the pilgrimages that come through. So if you look at the map again, you hit Antioch coming through and then down to Jerusalem. And that was in 1099. Finally there at the gates of Jerusalem. Now, in these guys' minds, and maybe we can fault them for making it, you say, this is too much. You know, it's just a place, guys. It's just a place. But also in their mind, it was something that was special, something that was sacred, something that was taken over. And something can be said about that in terms of warfare and psychology on people to say, like if you were in, I don't want to use America as an example again. If France were to lose Paris, that would be a huge hit on them psychologically. Paris is just a city, right? Well, yeah, no, because there's also a lot of culture there, a lot of monuments, a lot of part of their identity is there. And the same could be said about what happened Jerusalem too. So what about the Jews? The Jews can also say, hey, it was ours first. You know, this was our territory, and I would agree with that, to say that this is land that was initially theirs. The Christians are saying, well, we're an extension of Judaism, so there's that. But I do believe that there should be a place that they want to rebuild, temple. And that would be a controversial thing. But so the siege of Jerusalem took place. Godfrey and his troops scaled the wall.
Well, real quick, I know you keep saying that this is just a place, but this is also just a place that the Muslims are using to launch invasions, as well as, again, going back to the slavery trade, which the second rightly guided caliph, Umar, created a slave fleet just to go pillage and plunder Europe.
Yeah.
That was their whole goal, was we are going to use this part of the Mediterranean in order to launch consistent attacks and raids against the Christians for hundreds and hundreds of years. And if you're saying, hey, we need to make sure we're safe, we need a bulwark against this, that is a really good argument for why you'd want to take it, more than just it's a place. It's our defense.
Yeah. Yes. So they took it. Siege of Jerusalem. Sorry, I had to have a video in there somewhere. And
we're reviewing a book
scaled
for at almost an hour. I'm going into movie
review. On July 15th, 1099, securing a victory, a turning point that cemented Godfrey of Bouillon's fame. Now, there is questions about what happened during that time. Was there a massacre that happened? Were civilians killed? Did this strictly follow just war doctrine or theory? And I think the answer is no. We could go back and look and say, well, the Muslims have done it, so therefore, we just, no. We have to hold a moral ground here. But we're not reviewing so much the battles themselves at this point. We're reviewing more the life of an individual. This was Godfrey. So once they took it, they said, hey, we need a king. And this is where they did the interview part. They interviewed the different soldiers under people say, we need somebody to do it because we're this eclectic group of all these different kingdoms and so forth. And some of these people are kings, they're dukes, they're governors and leaders of their areas. But who's gonna rule Jerusalem now? There's a bit of a power vacuum here. So they interviewed everybody, and it came to Godfrey. They said, okay, you are the king of Jerusalem, and this is where we get the title for. What did Godfrey do then when they said you are the king of Jerusalem?
I'm not a king. I'm just a steward, basically.
Right. He says, he refused to do that. He said, I could not wear a crown where my Savior wore a crown of thorns. So instead, he took on the title of Defender of the Holy Sepulchre. And he wanted to focus on that. So that's what we came here for. That's what we're trying to secure. Let that be enough. That I'll take that role. And we might think that this is not a power grab either, because remember, while he's gone from his homeland, he doesn't have a cell phone. He can't check up on what's going on there.
He sold everything. He abandoned everything.
Well, he did not abandon his title.
Oh, no.
So he did have that. So he did finance he was going to go back and reestablish, just like was it Henry the Lionhearted? I'm drawing a blank here.
Okay, Lionheart.
Okay, whatever. So he goes he's another one. So he goes back, and there's some questions and contesting of losing his territory because he was gone on this crusade. A lot of these guys are saying, I just want to go home. We got here. We're very happy. This is a great accomplishment. There's very few of us left. I want to go home. So he took it. And then the next few months, he is securing other territories around here. And this is where it would have been good to have a fleet, have a navy, because there's another place, Ascalon, in 1099. He had to lay siege to that. That's in the Gaza Strip.
Yep.
So, and it even goes back, and you can look at, say, that's where Goliath was. And that's where he came from. So this area, he had to secure it. It was a coastal town, and they were getting supplies from the sea. So it's very hard to lay siege and try to starve them out when they have goods that are coming in through their port. So he governed from 1099 until 1100, laying the foundation of the king, and then he was killed.
Dun, dun,
dun, dun, dun. And do you know who killed him?
It wouldn't be emissaries from a Muslim group now, would it?
Yes, it would. And do you know the means by which he was murdered?
Oh, you mean he gave him some poison food and relied upon his noble nature in order to eat the food that was gifted to him by these emissaries who had poisoned the food while they're under truce.
Yes. Yes. Does that sound like it's anything they inherited maybe from the Quran or the Hadiths or the traditions of Muhammad?
In that case, Muhammad just killed her entire family and then like, yeah, you can cook me food. In this case, is definitely different. Again, this is a trend that you will see happen over and over as we go through these different defenders. They rely on the Muslims. They trust treaties from the Muslims, and the Muslims stab them in the back. It seems to be a consistent trend. Oh, no.
Okay, so I see there's a lot in... I want to go through the comments because I see a lot there. The fragmented nature of Christian lands hampered any sort of military action against Islamic aggression, and that is true. And I'm looking for some others here. Thank you, Richard the Lionheart. Oh man, Richard. I couldn't. Yes, Richard the Lionheart. The same thing happened to him when we went back to his towns.
Which will be? Isn't that our next one?
No. El Cid is the next one that we're going to be doing. Yes.
Oh, El Cid.
So another one we have here by Oliver Cromwell said, "Christ, not man, is king." A good example, not or not. You decide. Yeah, if Oliver Cromwell was to do that. Yes, and Artrix said,
Yep.
It sounds exactly like Muhammad got outwitted by a Jewish woman. Yeah, unfortunately for Godfrey, it was poison from the Muslims that got him. And then if we look at the timeline again, we shall see that his brother then took over for him. And there's a lot to be said in the aftermath of Godfrey, and wrapping that up. Let me get rid of this comment here. He was the loss. His loss was felt by everyone there because he was such a strong leader that there was questions about, will we be able to hold on to the city in his absence?
Even the Muslims were telling their kids, be quiet or Godfrey might come get you.
Yes.
That's interesting.
Yeah, that was a phrase that was used. So I'm going to ask you a couple of questions just as we wrap up here, and find out what your thoughts are here. I want to see if we can get something going here in the chat, just as we absorb what Godfrey's life and the whole interaction he's had. Do we need figures like Godfrey of Bouillon today? And if so, why? And was he a hero or a flawed figure of his time? Those are real questions. Both of those, especially the hero thing, is to say, because would we hold these guys up as an example? Do we need somebody like that today? So I'm going to look at some of the comments here. Let's see, treaties. Okay. Treaties are just delay tactics for Muslims.
It really is, because again, the Muslim mindset is that there is the House of Islam and then the House of War.
Mm-hmm.
And at no point in the Muslim mindset is there ever actually peace with the infidel. It's always, you're either raging war against the infidel directly, or you're preparing for war. So as soon as that, let's have peace, it is, hey, I got to deal with other things. I can't really deal with you right now. I know that you'll honor this peace deal. So I'll give you this peace deal and I'll go deal with the other things or build up my army to a point where I know I can just annihilate the snot out of you. And then as soon as that peace deal comes, or more likely than not, as we will go through these books, you'll find that they'll just take advantage whenever they feel like it. They'll just violate it left and right.
It seems to be the case that is just biding time.
And again, the concept from their standpoint is the Christians are the worst of creatures. They're not trustworthy. They're not to be trustworthy. Breaking vows with them, breaking oaths with them aren't a big deal. That's why they have the Bismillah law. Because if they don't have the Bismillah law, then Muslims can't even trust each other.
What is that?
Oh, the Bismillah? It's where they call down the judgment and curse of Allah upon themselves if they are lying.
Oh.
And they do that Muslim to Muslim, because you can't do that to a non-believer, but Muslim to Muslim, they'll call down, say, for example, I didn't steal their sheep. And then they'll go through the ritual and call down the judgment. And then the guy says, yes, you did steal my sheep. And you'll go through the ritual. And then it's believed that within 1 year, one of them will die, because one of them lied.
Okay.
So, but that is the only way to keep a Muslim be able to keep his word between two Muslims.
Wow.
It's that bad. They had to make a ritual to not deceive each other.
Okay, so the question was whether Godfrey of Bouillon was a hero or flawed, and Nicodemus said flawed for sure. I wonder.
I would say a mix.
In what way?
He's flawed no more than a normal man is.
Well, of what we talked about tonight, the question is, what way, or maybe something I didn't mention that would be brought up historically. How was he flawed? In what way? Because I don't see anything. Of course, everybody's everyone's sinful.
Flawed.
Everyone's sinful except for Jesus. So there is that flawed character, but something that's outstanding. I don't know about the taking of Jerusalem. I don't know specifics that happened there. If they gone too far,
that'd be the only point that I could look at based upon what we discussed today.
And Thomas Hall said, "I think the lesson here is get a Navy, kids." You'll save time and resources. Yeah,
Yep,
especially if you are trying to take your not that. Where's the other one? Take your journey. You might get there a little bit quicker if you have good ships, right? It's
just maybe almost like the rest of the Crusaders in the future did that.
Yeah. And then Jack Ray said, why can't someone be a hero that is flawed as well? Only Christ is flawed. And I think that really is a good answer to say, at what point, would you say, I don't know, I'm just going to take a historical figure, for example, and I'm probably shooting myself in the foot for choosing him, but take Napoleon. There's definitely some, going out too far, and
Definitely.
But we do have the metric system, so there is that, and maybe correct me if I'm way off historically, but I believe it was
another example. A better example would be King David. He did a lot of things, but at the same time, he would repent of the wrong that he's done.
And here's the thing too. God didn't shrink back from saying the negative stuff.
Nope.
I mean, it was all right out there. And this was a man after God's heart, right?
I think that's the point of it. Man after God's own heart. He was pursuing God.
Yeah.
Not that he was God's own heart. It's no. He's pursuing it. It's an action. And sometimes you slip, you stumble, and you fall. But he didn't wallow in it. He picked himself back up and continued to choose to pursue God.
Yep, that would be the difference. Christian Sodium Channel said, I've been thinking that the same thing about Constantine. Despite his flaws, his role in Christian history cannot be denied. Yes.
Yep.
I say that just about almost every historical figure. Was it an accident, what those people did? Can we say God is working through these people? In what people are we talking about here?
Maybe the Crusaders at that point. I mean, there is
in general.
There is times in the Bible that we look back and say, you know what? God used even corrupt individuals to pass judgment on other people that need judgment passed upon them.
Now, I think we can say that the question is whether you should be pacifist or not. I think we kind of covered that already before with the just war theory, right? And can you be a Christian and be a pacifist? Yes. Can you be a Christian and be a hawk? Yes, I believe. But there's a problem with war is that famine and disease and unintended consequence and all of the things come with that. So even if you're doing the right thing, you're defending your little brother from getting beat up and you accidentally hit somebody else, as a consequence or whatever, bad things happen in the defense. And so were these people justified in their initial actions of the Crusades in trying to defend what was out there?
I'd say yes. I'd say solid yes.
Okay, so nobody claims that Constantine was flawless except the asinine, gaslighting, hypocrisy, slanderous Christian bashers. And breakfast.
I probably pronounced it wrong.
Oh, Breakfast Gun is correcting you.
I'm horrible at pronunciation.
You should probably get better with that, though.
I know. I'm working on it.
Mubahala.
Mubahala is it. Sorry.
Okay.
My apologies. And yes, Carol B is also correct.
And she says Mahaba. No, there's no U. Is there a U or not? No, we're going to start a fight in the chat. They're going to go at it. Yes.
It's yep. The whole point is to keep them honest or they will die.
Okay. God uses, amen, Jack, God uses flawed people for his glory. Yes. Even, and then Nicodemus said, all the saints are flawed and flawed even, and many of them discuss exactly that, their own spiritual struggles. Yeah, that's true. You can even look at Paul in Romans chapter 7, talking about the things that he wishes he would do that don't, back and forth. But
and I think that's why most of them are looked up to, is the fact that they dealt with issues and overcame them. and pursued God in spite of their shortcomings.
Yeah, and that's a big thing too. It's not just to say, "Oh, I'm sinful. I can just go ahead and keep on doing that because I identify as a sinner." And blah blah blah. That's
returning to its vomit.
That's not the case. Is that you're a disciple, right? There's discipline that's involved with that. Okay, just a couple more, and then we need to wrap up. To Eric's comment, Samson, the worst of judges.
Yeah, Samson. That's a better one. Oh my gosh, Samson is such a bad judge. Oh, he violated everything and continued to do it, but yet he still repented at the end.
Did he?
He repented. He repented of everything he did.
Okay.
And then tore down and killed himself.
So, one last comment here. He says, need a vid on Joan of Arc someday.
Joan of Arc's an interesting character.
Wow, that would
historically
be yeah, that would be okay. So we can look at these defenders of the West that are mentioned here, and this is the first one that we're taking a look at, Godfrey of Bouillon. Flawed character. We didn't talk too much about what his flaws would have been. This guy really stands out as being a good guy. Although the question is, the taking of Jerusalem, were there things that were gone too far in that? I don't know. Even we'd have to look closer.
Even with the detail that we have gone into, the book goes even deeper.
Yeah, it does.
There's a lot more to his story that you guys can enjoy if you pick up the book and read it.
And you can also, this is an audio version of that as well. And this is probably a good time for me to plug my book, The Healing Stone, which does deal with the Crusades in Spain. There's different battles that are done there. The Battle of Las Navas de Tolosa and Malagon and Alarcos and others. But the main focus then, this is just a fiction story, although it's historically based. And the idea then is you can use this as a point of evangelism, getting people enjoying the book, enjoying a good story, and then going from there. The link for that book and Defenders of the West is in the description for the video, so you can pick those up where the best books are sold. Next week, no, before this next week, this Friday.
It's Friday, yep.
You and me are both, and some others are going to be on Hatun Tash's channel. I do not have the link for the video yet, but we will be reviewing the movie Kingdom of Heaven. Now, this is one that we've reviewed ourselves before, but we'll be reviewing that with them. This is the fall of Jerusalem. So this is the opposite.
We covered the taking of Jerusalem by the Christians. Kingdom of Heaven covers the fall of Jerusalem to the Muslims.
Right,
again.
Right. And we asked the question, how accurate is this movie? Is there... Okay, so just look at our video before, but we're going to be getting on her channel this Friday.
Well,
I look forward
history
to it.
Is more of like guidelines.
That's right. That's right. More like guidelines. So we had, if you guys could join us for that, especially those who have reviewed, all you history buffs that are out there. We'd love to have you with us when we do that review with Hatun. And we did do the review also on the just war theory and talked about the rules for that, the laws. No, they weren't really laws. They weren't really rules. They were more like...
The code is more what you call guidelines than actual rules.
Better.
Yes.
Oh, queued that up better, but I wouldn't realize he had it.
So, but next week, we are going to be going on this channel. We're going to be going over El Cid, and this is in Spain. What he did, was he based, is the question that we're going to be asking. And looking at his life, the history, the context that was going on there, different struggles. What would you do in these guys' place? What would you take? I try to tell people instead of take care, take courage, because I think in our culture, we lack courage to make decisions on the spot and to step up to make a difference in the world instead of just kowtow and say, I don't want to lose my reputation. I don't want to lose all this. We needed to have the courage to say that reputation is nothing. I give it all up for the cross. So again, thank you all for participating. It's been fantastic, and we will see you next time.
Oh, and in case I don't see you, Good afternoon, good evening, and good night.